As you build your business, your role is bound to expand in turn, and the stakes only get higher. If you drop the ball now, it can have serious consequences for your business. Founders are all too aware of this reality, but often, instead of asking others for help, they feel even more responsible to do it all themselves. They double down, working harder while not realizing that the damage that they're doing is not just to themselves and their time management, but to their team itself. On remote teams, delegation can pose special challenges. Whenever you can't just look over someone's shoulder, you might feel a little bit concerned or worried about how can you gauge their progress on a new task or the things that they're doing now. But in reality, you shouldn't be constantly looking over someone's shoulder. That is a poor use of your time, and that shows a lack of trust. In some cases, delegation means making a new hire. In other times, it means just handing over a task to a trusted member of your team that you have now. Rather than hiring a new employee, you might just need to upskill a current one that you have. Let's look at why delegation is so important for a leader and for the business. Then we'll get into strategies for leveraging this core leadership skill to grow your team's capacity. First, let's talk about the consequences of avoiding delegation. Look, whenever leaders avoid delegation, they set themselves up for high levels of stress and ultimately burnout. Moreover, they lack the time for value-generated activities that drive business success, like strategic planning or just checking in with your team to see what challenges that they are facing. In turn, team outcomes suffer, and organizations lack the creative direction that could propel them to the next level. And by conveying a lack of trust in your employees by not giving them tasks that they can do, failure to delegate also erodes team culture and also confidence. Here's a stat for you. A report from the Leadership Development Assessment Company says that 1 in 6 leaders is experiencing burnout. Biggest reason for this is lack of delegation. 50% of them are disengaged with their very own business and almost 4 times more likely to leave their own company. But learning to delegate plays a pivotal role in preventing burnout. For this reason, a full 91% of HR execs in the US say that delegation is a core leadership skill. Delegation can also help build a foundation of trust with clients. By asking a trusted team member for support with a client communication, you can improve the client experience. So let's talk about why leaders struggle with delegation to begin with. You may be thinking this whenever you think about delegation. Here are some very common things that I hear from people all the time whenever I'm talking to them about delegating out tasks. This may be one of your thoughts. Look, no one else can do it as well as I can. They're not ready for that kind of responsibility. I'm just not sure I can coach them on how to handle that task correctly. Nobody wants to do this. I hate doing it. I feel guilty for asking someone else to do it. Or you may just be in this category. I don't have the time to teach someone how to do this. Hey, look, I get it. I've been there myself. But it's time for you just to take action, take control of your business, take control of your time, and start delegating. Most leaders have these thoughts at some point, which keeps them from working more effectively. As a founder, entrepreneur, small business owner, or manager, you need to focus on freeing up time for the tasks that really matter, which means trusting people to take new challenges whenever they've shown that they are already ready for that. So let's start talking about strategies for effective delegation. Look, real delegation involves more than just piling up tasks on people. Rather, it entails a genuine transfer of the responsibilities and the authority, followed by meaningful feedback. This always brings risk, but it's a strategic risk that ultimately helps your team and your business to grow. So let's talk about some steps. Here's going to be some concrete steps that you can actually use to master the art of delegation. You won't just make sure that the essential tasks get done, you also enhance your people's growth and build up their confidence. So first thing is create a stop doing list. I know you've heard this, you've seen blog posts, you've seen TikToks and all the other things about this. In an earlier post on how to hire the right talent, I mentioned the importance of defining your strengths and crafting a stop doing list. The tasks on that list are the ones that you need to delegate. They're the ones that don't require your skill set or maximize the value that you bring to the business. One way of saying it is They don't light you up and they don't drive revenue. You need to figure out how do you spend more time doing that. And all the other pieces of the business, while they're important, you need to figure out how to delegate them. So sit down and make a list of all these tasks and priorities that you handle each week. Then circle the ones that don't require your expertise or your abilities. Don't be afraid to give away things that you don't enjoy. Someone else may really like doing that. One way to do this is on a spreadsheet. I like this method. Now this is a little time consuming, but it is very productive. Get yourself a spreadsheet and then make it into 15-minute blocks. Set an alarm that goes off every 15 minutes and then write down what you did in that last 15 minutes. I know it sounds like a lot, but this is a very productive exercise and it will reveal where you're wasting a lot of time and where you just got time that's just disappearing. Now that you have your stop doing list, the next step is to start with strengths and determine the best person to handle a task off. Look at the list of things, consider what are the skills that are needed, and then look at your team to see who has that, and then give it to them. By considering their key strengths and their interests, you will help offload these tasks very effectively. Has anyone expressed a desire to build their skills in any of these areas? That's another question you can ask yourself. Does a team member have these abilities that lend themselves well to that task? Even if they don't possess like formal training, that's fine. Just look for the skills. They're willing to grow if you give them responsibility. Look, another thing you can consider is what each team member's career goals are. Would giving them this and also helping them to build that skill help them to get prepared for advancement later on? As your business grows, you're going to need people from within your team to move up into leadership roles. This may be a great opportunity to start prepping that person. Here's an example from my blueprint, my business, where I place VAs. I've helped set up several different small business owners where they needed just some sort of back office service employee to manage tasks, manage data, maybe manage the CRM or their management system or whatever the different things are. What we did was we took a look at this business and that person that they needed and the skill set they needed, but we also looked at it a little broader with a thought in mind of taking this virtual assistant and then moving them eventually into an executive assistant role, because you want them to be able to learn you, learn your business, and learn how to interact with you so they can do things like manage your email, managing your calendar, or just other different tasks that you need them to do to help you manage your life. This is a great way to offload something, teach them how to do it, and then advance them into a new role that ultimately grows with you. Not only does it grow with you, it also sets them up so they can train the person that's going to come later, saving yourself double the work there. So now that you've decided who to assign tasks to and you've got this list, it's time to adapt a framework. Always try to create some sort of a framework for how this process will work inside of your business. Often leaders feel unclear about what the process of delegation should actually look like. Using a clear framework can help you set up a new pattern for offloading responsibilities. The Project Management Institute shares this 30% solution. I love this solution. I use it personally, and I think it works fantastic, especially for my personality as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and also a visionary for both of my companies. It's important to kind of know yourself and what works well for you. So here's the process. Spend the first 20% of the project working together. So you start off the project and the two of you working side by side, helping them to understand it and ask any questions. After you've asked them clarifying questions to make sure that they understand the whole scope of the project, shift the next 70% of it where they work on their own. Hey, give feedback regularly. Depending on the project size and the scope of it, you may need to do it daily, you may need to do it just weekly. It just depends on the project. Once they get through the 70%, then wrap it up with the last 10% where the two of you collaborate together. That way you can review it, see how they did, praise them for the good work that they did and the strong points, and giving them corrections so that they will know how to do it better next time if there's just something that just fell a little short. But always do it in a framework of trying to be supportive to give them positive feedback. Look, with this framework, you can nail down all the crucial details while still letting that employee work independently for a good chunk of the time. Let them build the framework for you So that way they will own it, and then they will be able to teach the next person. Remember the VA to EA example I gave a few minutes ago. You're building building blocks. You're thinking about the future right now with the expectation that eventually this person's going to need to move up and someone else is going to come in. So this person can teach that new hire how to do this, and then you don't have to do that. Because as you learn these new skills that you are able to focus your time on by offloading tasks, you're going to get a little rusty, and they're going to own it. So you want them teaching, not you anyway. So then the next time that they handle a task or project, they might be ready to tackle it right from the get-go on their own by using this framework and setting up these guidelines. So now let's talk about not micromanaging. Hey, you need to avoid micromanaging at all costs. That is a point of trust. Don't control exactly how the task is done. I love what Dan Martell says, 80% as good as me is 100% awesome. In other words, delegate the deliverables, not the methods. Train the employee in using any necessary tools or processes, but after that, trust them to handle it. Look, they may find some sort of creative solution or time saver that you just haven't thought of. In the process, set clear expectations and define what success looks like for any given deliverables. Set up some key performance indicators, KPIs. Here's a couple of different examples depending on what your business is. Increase maybe client referrals by 25% and give a time frame. Maybe you want to do that within the first quarter or 6 months of them taking over this role. Maybe it's increased customer retention by 10%. Again, also give some time frame. These help them to understand what they're shooting for, and then they can self-monitor to see how they're doing based off of that. Record the process and ask the employee to do this. That way, no one has to reinvent the wheel. Allow them to do this process where they're recording it and recording the steps. Help them to understand that, hey, eventually, this is going to be yours. You're going to own it. We're going to have to probably hire someone eventually to assist you, and you'll need to teach them how to do this like you do it. Then they will really own it, and you'll show pride in them, and also really boost their morale. Because again, remember, you never know when you'll need this for a future employee, and then you also have a point of reference for, from now moving forward. Before you hand off the task, after the 20% collaboration period, and again at the end, ask clarifying questions. Hey, ask questions to assess their understanding as you explain any new task or project. At the same time, don't sound like you're just testing people. Ask them to describe the key points or processes that you've explained, so you can clear up any sort of understandings that maybe felt confusing, and then invite them to ask any questions, even if they seem trivial. So now that you have a plan to delegate, let's talk about the balance of support and accountability. As people build proficiency in any new task, share constructive feedback, then hold them accountable for meeting those expectations. Look, striking a balance between support and accountability will help you coach your employees to success. This is according to the Society for Humane Resources Management. So now let's discuss a few key ways to do this. One of them is encourage risk-taking. Let people try new ways to approach a problem. Request a periodic snapshot of progress. Then share detailed input with the employees. Use any hurdles as a springboard for growth. Ask questions that promote reflection, and then help the employee to move towards solutions rather than just spoon-feeding them answers. Don't just give them answers. Help them, lead them to the answers. Help them to discover it on their own, so they will truly understand the process and what the important parts of it are. Hold review sessions at regular intervals. For a large project, this may be once a week. For smaller tasks, share bite-sized feedback more informally. Maybe set up a time block each day where people can just walk into your office and ask questions. People won't always get it 100% right on the first try, and that's okay. You didn't either. Everyone needs time to learn, adapt, and then build confidence. Continue coaching them to success as they hone their abilities to handle those tasks. In most cases, giving plenty of support and validation will also help them to quickly get up to speed. Look, if you're unsure of how to delegate responsibilities, IA Blueprint can help you. We pair organizations with qualified assistants who are ready to tackle a range of business needs, from remarketing clients to sending and tracking important documents to managing a CRM system or managing your email inbox and helping to buy back your time. And since we're already equipped with insurance experience and then also other specific industry experiences, they're ready to hit the ground running. To talk more in depth, find the right virtual assistant for you, schedule a call with me. I'd be glad to help you out.